you can generate real options strategy tree inside the PEAT software by first going to the options strategy tab. And by the way, when you first get started, you should see this strategy tree number 1. You can always right click on it, add strategy tree, add as many tabs as you want to, duplicate an existing tree, rename or delete those trees. All right. So let me give you a quick heads up on how to navigate this option strategy tab, if you will. So typically what you would do is look at some of the icons that's up here. First icon is actually the file icon. You can create a new tree, open an existing tree. Also, you can protect that tree, especially if it's strategic investments and you want to put a password encryption on it. It's 256-bit encryption, so military strength, very, very difficult for anybody to actually crack open. You can also open up examples. Examples are always a great thing to use. So here's an example of field development for an oil and gas company for Saudi Aramco, for instance. You can zoom in, zoom out as appropriate. This is what I mean by a strategy tree. You can again spend some time looking at some additional examples. You can zoom in and zoom out to see how strategy trees are actually generated. But let me just walk you through a very simple generation of a strategic investment path. And this is called framing the options. You're framing your alternate investments, putting words, putting models, putting analytics into a picture. So especially when you're presenting this to senior management, executive teams, and so forth, you want to be able to show a picture. It's a picture tells it's worth 1,000 words, right? So the illustration is very, very valuable in this case. So typically there's a starting point. You have to start somewhere. So click on that, and you notice that there is a little square box here that says insert option. That's also a insert terminal, which means at the end. So you can click on this drop list and you can insert 1 up to 10 very quickly, or just click on this existing note and click it one time. It will insert one option. Click another time, it will insert another one. You can select this and you can click it as many times as you want to. And select any of these nodes, move it to wherever you want, right? When it's selected, you can drag it and make it a little bit wider if you wish. You can select this cell right here. By selecting this node or this cell, what happens is every subsequent nodes are selected. So this is like a subtree. So by doing that, you can move this whole subtree all at the same time. Now, if I just want to move this option right here, I can right click on this node and it says move nodes individually or move it together. So if I move it individually, what happens is I can click on it again and move it individually in this case. Compared to right click, move it together, I can move the whole entire subtree together in this case. Again, drag it to whatever size you want to, and add any type of, let's say, terminal nodes and so forth. So that's your picture right there. Now we can double click on this node and up comes the option node property for this node itself. You can give it a name. So for instance, we can call it, say, this is an expansion. Okay, this is what we want to do. We want to expand to this different, market and so forth. Give it a value if you want it to. Let's say $100 million. You can link it to Excel. Okay, but typically we'll just type in a value, and notes will say, go to Europe market, for example. Whatever you want to type in here. You can insert those notes above or below the node, so it's up to you. And let's just click OK, see what happens. It says go to Europe market, $100, $100 million, that's the value, and it's expansion. I can double click on this again, and in this example I can say insert label in object. We'll just say EU, for instance, as a short form, and it says insert label in object, and we'll see what happens when we click OK. And here I say branch event name. We'll just say increase. So increase market share, for example. We'll click OK and notice that it has this word increase in here. That's for this branch, and EU is in here. So I can move this to an appropriate location. Okay, you can move, especially when you have a very busy tree, you can move it to wherever you want to. I can again double click on here, do whatever I wish. For example, use global colors. Or if I turn off use global colors, I want to make this a localized color for whatever reason. I want to make this green and click OK. And you see this is green in color. So you can change the coloration. You can do whatever you want on here. You can undo, redo certain things. Okay, actions. You can copy or paste. So for example, if I like this node, I can right click and copy that node or that tree If I copy that node, I can come into any other node, right click and paste. And there you have it. And all I need to do is, click on something else and click on that node and move it to wherever I want this node to be at. Similarly, I can click on this node, right click, and if I copy the whole entire tree, what happens is this whole entire piece right here will be copied, and I can paste the whole entire subtree somewhere else. So I can do a lot of different manipulation to the tree, if you will. I can also add text, and I can put a little note on here, double click on here and say this is my note. Okay, make it left align, right align, change different colors and so forth. You can move this note to wherever you want, resize the text box if you have a large note, and do whatever you want with this. You can also click on styles, and you see there are about 10 different styles that are automatically set up for you. So this is on fire, so it's red in color, sprawling 3D and so forth, or change it back to the default. Or if you make modifications to the colors, to the settings, size, font, and everything else, you can manage your style, and you can actually save your current style. So for example, if you have corporate colors or corporate font size or font types and things along those lines, you can actually create your own style and save it, if you will. You can also make additional modifications. So in here we can show name only, value, notes, whatever, turn things on or off. Or you can actually go into some of these other things like shapes and colors. You can change the background, the option, the terminal or the triangles. Text will be the manual text that we did. Background will be, in this case, default white color. Connection line, the colors of the line. Or let's just say we change the option itself. So here's the option. Here's the option node, right? So we can click on, let's say, the name. Change the font to size 14. Make it maroon in color, or maybe something is like red, for instance. Click OK. You can change the size, minimum, maximum size. So these are measured in pixels. The default is 32 by 32 as a minimum, and it can go all the way up to 86 width. You can make it, to a different shape if you want to. You can apply different shadows, background, and so forth. But I just changed the font color just to illustrate. If I click OK, notice that everything changes in this case. So when you're done with this, just make sure you go and you save this, or save as if you wish. If I wanted to, I can right click on it, rename the tree to whatever I want to call it, or duplicate that tree. It will look exactly the same, but the only difference now is maybe I don't have this node. I'll select that node, hit delete on the keyboard, and now I have two strategy trees. The only difference would be that expansion node that's missing. So feel free to play with this. You can also click on this and say capture the screen, and when you capture the screen, again, you can go to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever it is, and paste this picture in there, and you're good to go. Just remember to do a file save when you're done. This is a strategy tree, and typically strategy trees, let's just open a couple examples again just to illustrate. Here's a complex multi-phase stage gate investment process, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, sequential option. Typically strategy trees are used for showing your strategy, drawing the strategy tree, the map. So in other words, doing a framing of the options. We don't really do any valuation in option strategy trees. We just we can put numbers on here, but we don't do any valuations. The valuation comes later in the options valuation tab. But here we're just drawing pictures. Again, it's great presentation management. Sometimes you do want to do some basic calculations on a tree itself, and we call that decision tree. So we do have a decision tree tool capability. You can click on it here on the or on the icon. It will launch your decision tree, which looks like this, which is a separate tool. Okay, but it comes together with PEAT. So here's an example of a decision tree. This is actually a dynamic tree model. So it's dynamic stochastic. It runs simulation at the same time. Very similar to what you saw previously. You can change shapes, colors. We support 12 languages, different styles that you can go ahead and do. Copy, paste, moving things together. Very similar to what you saw previously. So let's just open up a very simple example. Let's just see a market research capability. And here is an example of a decision tree. You can, again, zoom in, zoom out as much as you want to. For a decision tree, it's a little bit different than a strategy tree. A strategy tree is, again, we just put numbers in there. We don't do any evaluation. There's no calculations, no computations. It's framing the options. And so compare that to a decision tree, which we can actually do some computations. So in decision trees, there are typically 3 types of nodes. The first node is something that looks usually like a square. It's a decision node. You make a decision. You're not sure, you hover over it, and we'll tell you that's a tooltip. The second type of tool will be uncertainty. A different type of a node will be an uncertainty node. It's usually a circle. And the third would be a triangle or a terminal node, which means at the end. You have to end the tree. You can't just have the tree go on forever. So in this example tree, you see a square, you see a circle, you see triangles in this case. So the square is a decision. So the decision is whether or not to perform market research. It costs you money to do market research. So think of it, if you're in oil and gas, this could be a wildcat, a drill, right? So do you do a test drill or do you not? If you're in, research and development, you're in operations research, you're doing manufacturing, you're creating different products, new and novel products, do you do IRADs, independent research and development, or not? If you're in for example, other areas like, do you build a large condominium or a small condominium, small houses or big homes? You do a market research to identify what the market is and so forth. Costs you money, takes time, so the question is, should you do it or not? So there are 2 branches, do research, or at the bottom it says no research. If you do not do a research, then you would execute now, and you need to make a decision. Do I, go into a small, medium, or large market? Do I build small homes or large condos? Whatever do I do? Do I use a small drill bit or a large drill bit on a oil and gas type situation? And so forth and so on. Do I do a large scale merger acquisition or a small scale implementation of my products? If I do a small scale, then these are my decisions, 3 branches. Then there could be different outcomes. The market could be strong or weak, and I give it some probability, 80-20. And so what would happen in this case? That's my payoff in this example. The profit would be $8 million. If I do a large scale, take the risk, and the payoff will be $20 million if the market is strong, compared to if I build a small product or hit a small market. So even if it's a strong market, I only get $8 million. But if I make the wrong decision, if I spend too much money on a large-scale implementation and the market happens to be weak, I lose money, in this case, negative $9 million. So the question is, what do I do? What's the optimal decision? And there's some probability of occurrence, of course. Compare that to, let's say, doing market research. So the research will come back and tell you the market is favorable or unfavorable. And given that it's favorable, what's the probability that the market indeed will be strong versus weak? If the market researchers who are hopefully credible tell you that the market is unfavorable, what's the probability that the market will indeed be weak compared to strong? So clearly it will be a higher probability of being weak. So we call this Bayesian updating, or updating the probabilities in this case. So you generate this tree and you decide which one do I go with. So again, using a very similar approach to what we've done previously with the strategy tree, you're just adding nodes and moving things around, making it nice and pretty. And typically you would finish drawing the tree. Then when you're done, you would double click on one of these nodes and you would enter in the values, if you will. So for example, in this circle right here, the uncertainty node, there are 2 outcomes potentially. I would double click on that and I would give it a probability. So let's say 77% probability. And this will be automatically calculated for you to be 23 because it needs to add up to 100%, right? So you can run a simulation on this if you wanted to. Set simulation assumptions. We won't go through all that. You can change the colors. You can put notes on here and so forth and so on. On the terminal node, you double click on that and you can give it a value. So in this case, again, you can run a simulations on some of these things. We're not really sure if you're going to make $8 million or not. So you put 8 million as a placeholder and then you run a simulation on that. Again, you can put notes, change the colors and so forth. So this is all done for you. I would highly recommend looking at some example decision trees and strategy trees just to get a good grasp of the methodology and techniques that's been used. In this case, when I'm done drawing the tree, I can put notes on here as you saw previously, and you see this guy running, which is compute. I'll click on compute. I can run a simulation or not. I can turn it on or off. Let's say I run a simulation, default is 10,000 trials. You can put a seed value. You can highlight maximum value or minimum value path. Maximum value just means what's the best path, with the highest return. So in this case, if these values are 8, 7, 14, let's say they are net present value or profits or benefits, clearly I want the maximum value. Now, if these are costs, then I would highlight the path with the minimum value. Or if they're risk, for example, I would choose the minimum value. So let's just say these are NPVs or benefits or value. We'll just make them as maximum value. And we'll click run. At the bottom, it says simulation is running and 10,000 trials are done. So it's completed. And you would say that the best path in this case is to indeed do market research. And if market research comes back and tells you it's favorable, you should go with the large drill bit, the large condo, the large implementation. If the market research tells you it's unfavorable, you should still go with the medium because that's the best solution that you can come up with. So therein lies your analysis. All right. You can also go to the other tabs, look at the summary values. It just summarizes your decision, uncertainty, and terminal nodes. So at one glance, very quickly, you can see the values. You can make the changes here as well directly, or you can go and double click on each of these manually. Simulation modeling, we ran a simulation, therefore you will be able to see the simulation. And so you can see the decision node that we're analyzing. Going back here, there are 1, 2, 3 squares, and there's one more square at the bottom, so there are 4 squares. These are my decision nodes, so you would be able to see 4 decisions. So in this case, choose a decision node that you care about, and you would see the mean, median values, all the statistics, all the simulations. Again, you can do percentiles. What's my 90% confidence? So 5% to the left, 5% to the right. So in the middle, it's 90% confidence. You're going to make between $14.7 and $17.6 million taking this market research route, if you will. You can, again, copy, paste results, overlay different charts. You can look at Bayesian analysis. This is a short video, so we don't have time to go through everything. But when you see load example, we always highly recommend you load example. Read through the example and see what Bayesian updating is all about. It's just probability updating. So given that you've done market research tells you it's favorable, what is the probability that indeed the market will be favorable, or vice versa? So that's called Bayesian updating. So it's conditional updating probabilities. Typically, you don't really use that, but if you wanted to, you can. Expected value, perfect information, minimax risk profiles. Again, load example, read through it. It will tell you minimizing your maximum regret, maximizing your minimum losses, and so forth. You can run sensitivities, scenarios, and even utility functions, if you will, if you're risk averse or if you're risk loving, and so forth. So what is your utility function actually look like? So you can take the utility function and apply it to the decision tree. So instead of using dollar amounts or millions of dollars, we're putting utility functions into the strategy tree in this case, if that is helpful for you. So very, very powerful. You can use a decision tree for drawing a lot of different strategies. The difference between a decision tree and strategy tree is strategy trees are usually used for real option strategy, mapping or framing the option, if you will, so drawing pictures, if you will, compared to a decision tree. Decision trees are typically used for, identifying the optimal path in this example, and the optimal path has values, and we can run simulations on here. So, go ahead and definitely experiment on this. So click File New, and you can just click Add Additional Decisions. Here's an uncertainty, and here are 2 outcomes. And again, you can move your tree to whatever location that you want to, and add as many type of decision paths as you want to. Very, very simple to do. Double click on it. Typically, the recommendation is draw your tree first. Okay, don't worry about the numbers, the inputs yet, because typically once you've created your strategy or your decision tree, you might end up moving things around, duplicating, deleting different paths, different nodes, adding additional nodes on there. And once you're done, you're happy with it, put the labels on there. And when you're happy, management accepts the strategy, accepts the decision tree. What you then do is you come back to the tree, and you double click on each of the nodes, okay, and you enter in the data, and then you run it. So typically data is entered for terminals and uncertainty nodes, because decision nodes are calculated. We're trying to figure out the best decision. So clearly you don't enter decision numbers numbers in the decision nodes, if that makes sense. And then all you need to do is run simulations, set assumptions, and run a dynamic tree. Very simple to do.